Let me take a moment before this episode to tell you a little bit about the World Ethics Organization and the upcoming Global Ethics Day. Premiering online Wednesday, October 18th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Ethics and Leadership Global Ethics Day Symposium hosted by the World Ethics Organization. This live-stream virtual symposium will cover topics such as what it means to be an ethical leader, why ethical leadership is beneficial to you, your team, your company, and the world, how to integrate ethical considerations into your decision-making process, and practical steps that you can take to create and maintain a culture of ethics. The event panelists are among the world's foremost leaders and influencers in the field of ethics, including Dr. Simon Longstaff, AO, Executive Director of the Ethics Center, Sydney, Australia, and Skeet, Senior Director of Leadership Ethics at the Markula Center for Applied Ethics, Santa Clara University, and Dr. Walter Fluker, Martin Luther King Jr. Professor Emeritus of Ethical Leadership, Boston University. Register and join this live event October 18th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time at worldethicsorganization.org/upcoming events. And thanks. Hello, my name is Hasan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, Shorts. There's no co-host on these Shorts episodes. These are now around 6 to 8 minute long observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership. Because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 6 to 8 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book that has been sitting in your Amazon queue that you just haven't been able to bring yourself to purchase for around the last 6 months. It turns out that the global delicate geniuses of smart don't have any good new ideas. At least not really. And why would they, when all the old bad ideas ensure that they can still head to Davos every year and cavort on the beach? By now, unless you've been living with your head in the sand, you've probably heard of Klaus Schwab and the Great Reset. It is a set of ideas being advanced by the heads of global institutions in the finance, government, and media sectors that purports to create a world for the hoi polloi where, infamously, you'll quote-unquote own nothing and be happy, as was quoted by a Danish politician, the Social Democrat Ida Auken, in a video in 2016. Now, there's been a lot of hyperventilating about the Great Reset recently, so I, in the spirit of this podcast, want to avoid that. And I want to quote the Great Reset's ideas, its core ideas, directly from its online mouthpiece, Wikipedia. And I quote, "The Great Reset Initiative is an economic recovery plan drawn up by the World Economic Forum, WEF, in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The project was launched in June 2020 with a video featuring the then Prince of Wales, Charles, released to mark its launch. The initiative's stated aim is to facilitate rebuilding from the global COVID-19 crisis in a way that prioritizes sustainable development." WEF Chief Executive Officer Klaus Schwab described 3 core components of the Great Reset: creating conditions for a stakeholder economy, building in a more resilient, equitable, and sustainable way, utilizing environmental, social, and governance metrics, and harnessing the innovations of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. In a speech introducing the initiative, International Monetary Fund Director Kristalina Georgieva listed 3 key aspects of a sustainable response to COVID-19: green growth, smarter growth, and fairer growth. Close quote. There are so many top-down, hubristic, and totalitarian assumptions undergirding the premises of those 2 paragraphs I just quoted you from Wikipedia that it almost boggles a leader's mind. And all this utopian centralized plan chatter, as was stated in the 2 paragraphs, really began in 2020, during the time of one of the greatest global leadership collapses in the postmodern era. A time where, I guess, Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum were really channeling and really living out the sentiment of a former Chicago mayor and chief of staff to former President Barack Obama, in that they were never letting a crisis go to waste. But as Gandalf, that hoary old wizard from The Lord of the Rings once wisely told Frodo, deep in the mines of Moria, there are more forces than just those of evil operating in the world today. And for every action, such as COVID-19, there is an equal and opposite reaction, such as the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation began in 2021 as employees of companies, great and small, began to realize that they had the ability to leave their jobs and relocate their families globally and nationally. During the COVID-19 pandemic, close to 60% of all white-collar employees in the United States alone were working from home. Without a steady commute, daily interactions with coworkers at the office, and without monitoring from the Bill Lumbergh management types, workers and organizations began to, resign. Not in a flood at first, but once the toothpaste of working from home was out of the tube, there was no getting it back in. No matter what Jamie Dimon, he of Bank of America fame, could assert in interview after interview on CNBC. Now, in order to keep those workers from resigning or to keep them from relocating too quickly, wages increased. And while productivity among white-collar workers increased as well, eventually, 3 years later, the Great Resignation and the operating assumptions underneath it has morphed into the return calls for unionization, the struggle of major corporations to get people to return to the office, strikes by blue-collar workers with the UAW, and walkouts by employees at Kaiser Permanente. Combine this forward opposite motion with the raising of interest rates in the American economy and the specter of a worldwide recession looming, dare I say a great recession, deglobalization occurring at pace, and the continued underreported collapse of the once vaunted Chinese economic model, and the table is set globally and nationally where you may be standing for a different type of leadership. But that's not what is on offer from the powers that be at the World Economic Forum or in any of these large corporations or holders of global governance. See, the problem is, if you believe in the mindset behind the ideas of the Great Reset, you actually don't have any new ideas at all. Just warmed over, retreaded ideas from the totalitarian regimes of the last 120 years. Global surveillance via our phones and internet, global monitoring of our purchases and our transactions via banks and financial institutions, global monoculture spreading like a virus, and the appearance of massive chaos with no one actually leading anyone anywhere has encouraged the rise of leaders in name only, but power mongers all. The presence of more cameras on street corners or located in your phones is not going to create an environment where, and I quote, green growth, smarter growth, and fairer growth are on offer to anyone in the West, much less anywhere else in the world. The end goal pressures of financialization through the establishing and pursuit of ESG metrics isn't going to make more jobs for more average people. And the leaders who believe that it will are at the best horribly mistaken, and at the worst, deeply and cynically manipulative. The tragedy of all this is that real, genuine, reflective, and visionary leadership does not come from the World Economic Forum. They're lost leaders at best, late to the game, always. Real, genuine, reflective, and visionary leadership, the kind of leadership that can lead people through a recession or even a reset, comes at the local level from politicians, civic leaders, and even pencil-pushing bureaucrats at the closest possible level to the people they actually and fundamentally serve. But this is not a new idea. And the fact that it isn't new means that it is probably the best idea we have for leading people, organizations, communities, and families through and past whatever Klaus Schwab and the boys and girls at the World Economic Forum and other alphabet organizations at a global level have cooked up for us in their infinite wisdom. And well, that's it for me. Thank you for listening and subscribing to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast. If you're listening to this on any of the major podcast players like iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, please go ahead and leave us a 5-star review and write a little bit in there. A couple of sentences is good enough. That actually helps us game those algorithms that I was just maybe addressing. And, of course, it helps us grow the show. Tell all your family, tell all your friends, and tell the leaders in your life that you know that need to be listening to this show that this show exists. By the way, if you want to get started on the leadership path yourself, or you know some people who need to go on the leadership path, HSCT Publishing, the home company of Leadership Toolbox and Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, can help you and your team do that. So check out our training webinars, coaching services, and more at leadershiptoolbox.us. We are remote, we're live, we're in person, we're on video, and we've got leadership development solutions for your civic group, nonprofit staff, public sector staff, or even your private sector leaders. And of course, you're going to want to check out our video-based subscription service at leadingkeys.com. That's leadingkeys.com for leadership development on demand. You don't like videos, you don't like training, but you really like the podcast? Well, I would also recommend reading a book. Matter of fact, I'd recommend reading my most recent book, 12 Rules for Leaders, The Foundation of Intentional Leadership. You can get that in paperback, hardcover, or as an ebook on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, Ingram Spark, and any other place that you order books online. Finally, of course, we're on YouTube just like everybody else is. We'd love to have you help us grow the YouTube channel, so like and subscribe to the video version of this podcast on the HSCT Publishing channel on YouTube. Just search for HSCT Publishing, or you can search for Leadership Toolbox and hit the subscribe button. Subscribing helps us grow the show, as it does with the audio, just is the same with the video. All right, that's it for me.